Yes, so I just have just one verse as our main scripture today, and coming up with the first sermon at a first ministry, it's always hard because it really reveals what kind of speaker I am, right? A few things it really reveals the tone, the styles of my preaching, right? The words that I like to use. It also reveals I know it's different passage, different topics every week, but it really reveals the theological focus that I personally have, and also that I want the ministry to focus on. And lastly, it kind of reveals whether you will like me or not, whether you will fall asleep during this time, or whether you will stay focused. So it is kind of like nervous. I don't really get nervous. My personality, I just like to go with the flow. It's like. What is that called? Just do it. That's my life. And I don't get nervous, but always coming up with this is my fourth placement. So I've been to like three other different churches in the past, and I always remember my first sermons, and it's always kind of nervous because I want to set the tone right. I kind of want to show you who I am, exactly who I am, what I'm focused on, what I'm passionate about. So it really took me time to come up with this first sermon. And weeks before getting here, when I was in Korea, I was praying. What I should preach about, and my heart really moved toward this passage here today. And I truly felt that God was asking and leading me into sharing this message. And I want to do a little background story of what this passage is about. It's actually Paul writing his letter to the Corinthians, the church in the city of Corinth. And we see that we read chapter 12, verse 31, which is the last verse of chapter 12. And then we want to kind of connect that into chapter 13, where Paul talks about love. So this chapter 12 is about spiritual gifts, and chapter 13 is about love. And he connects it. He connects these two chapters with this verse, which is now eagerly desire the greater gifts, and yet I will show you the most excellent way. And when you think about this, isn't that what we want in our lives? The most excellent way. When we think about our life in general, for younger ones, when we plan our schools, our career, right, what we want to do when we grow up, we think about what's the most excellent school that we can get into, what's the most excellent career, what's the most excellent living situation that I can walk into. And for those of you with children, we also think about their education, right? What's the most excellent way, most excellent schools, most excellent education systems, after school programs, sports activities, what are the most excellent ways that we can lead our children into? And when we get older, we think about what's the most excellent retirement plan, right? When we retire, what's the most excellent way that I can just enjoy the rest of my life? And whatever we're looking for, wouldn't it be just great if we can just find that most excellent way? Wouldn't it be great? Even for myself, as I start a new season here at Hyoshin EM, I was thinking about what is the most excellent way for this ministry? What is the most excellent way that God has allowed us to walk on? What is that way? And luckily, Paul, through the letter to the Corinthians, kind of teaches us this the most excellent way. And in order for us to understand this, we need to do a little background context, right? We need to study a little background context of what the church in Corinth is going through and was going through. So here, this is how generally the story went. The Paul, on his second mission trip, established a church in Corinth. He established this Corinthian church in Corinth during his second missionary journey, and he spent roughly about an year and a half there, preaching, being a leader in that church. And he moves on to the next place, Ephesus, for as he continues on in his journey on missions, right? And after Paul, Apollos, who's a co-worker, like a companion of Paul, takes in charge of Corinthian church. And here's the problem. After some times, after Paul moved away, and after some time, this church was divided into four factions, four groups, four cliques. And I want to kind of explain these four groups. I'm pretty sure you've heard this this verse like, I follow Paul, I follow Apollos, I follow Cephas, I follow Christ. I'm pretty sure you've heard it, and I'm going to kind of explain what each of these groups were focused on. First one is pro Paul. They were for Paul. They were supporting Paul, and these were the Gentile converts. They were loyal to Paul because he was the founder of the church. The second group they were followers of Apollos, the second leader that came to this church, and these people were generally a little more educated, more intellectual than the others. That's why they liked Apollos, because Apollos' style of preaching was very intellectual and philosophical compared to Paul's, where it was more very direct. And the third group was pro Cephas, or as we know it as Peter, one of 12 disciples. And although Peter was never present at that church, many Jewish Christians, they in Corinth, they looked up to Paul and Peter because they prioritized Jewish traditions. And lastly, the last group was pro Christ. I follow Christ. And we might think, okay, this is the right group to follow, right? Shouldn't we all follow Christ? Shouldn't we all put Christ first? But realistically, what this group focused on, rather than the words of Christ, rather than following Christ himself, it was more focused on the supernatural side of Christianity. They followed super spiritual aspects of life, and they were all about how can I show myself as more righteous, right? And so there were this tension and competition between the four groups within the church, and they were basically fighting over who is or which group is the most holiest in the church. I mean, I hope we don't do that here, right? We don't do that here, right? And now a lot of these were measured. How they measured how do we measure who's more holier in church? It's weird. It's kind of weird thing to ask. But at that church, in the Corinthian church, how they measure that was by spiritual gifts, and specifically praying, speaking in tongues was considered one of the most holiest thing a person can do as a Christian at that time, and not just within that church but in that society. Corinth was a city where it was a very mixed cultural, mixed religion society, and across all religions they all thought, okay, whoever can speak in tongue are the ones who are the closest to a deity, to God. So just naturally, even the church believed that whoever speaks in tongue, prays in tongues, it would be the most holiest. And in contrast, those with spiritual gifts of helping, administration, service, that are like more subtle and more practical, were considered inferior and unnecessary in Christian life. But this is how Paul explains spiritual gifts in his letter. When we read chapter 12, verses 4 through 6, I'll read this to you guys. It says, there are different kinds of gifts, but the same Spirit distributes them. There are different kinds of service, but the same Lord. There are different kinds of working, but in all of them and in every one, it is the same God at work. It's the same Spirit that distributes the spiritual gifts. It's the same Lord that teaches us how to use those, and it's the same God that works through us and in us for us to use that to serve one another. I mean, wouldn't it be great if we can pick our spiritual gifts? Wouldn't it be great if I can just pick? As I was preparing this message, I had a deep self-reflecting time, thinking about what my spiritual gifts are. It was really hard. It was, being honest, it didn't feel good at first, because as someone who like walks up here regularly and shares the gospel, wouldn't it be great if I had the spiritual gift of delivery, I don't know, prophecy, if I had the spiritual gift of like charisma, if I was if I had amazing features, if I was taller, I am pretty short. Like, yeah, that was my thing growing up, because I was always the shortest one in our family, and some people know my family, they're all super tall except for me. So I've always wondered, God, like, I'm the one that's choosing to go this path, and yet you chose me to be the smallest. All right, wouldn't it be great if I was taller, if I was good looking, if I had better voice, maybe to help you guys focus more, right, on things that I share? Wouldn't that be so great? But for whatever reason, the Spirit hasn't distributed me with those gifts. Hopefully, maybe later on, maybe. But as of now, the Spirit did not give me those yet. And sadly, what I realize is spiritual gifts are not, it's not like Baskin Robbins 31, where you can go and pick out your favorite flavors and, get what you want. It's not like Subway, where you pick your bread and your proteins, your veggies, whatever. It's actually, do you guys say this phrase a lot? It's you get what you get and you don't get upset. It's that way because it's the Spirit that distributes it, and that's how it works. So clearly, when we understand that it's the same Spirit, it's the same Lord and same God when it comes to our spiritual gifts, we can also understand that no one gift makes that person greater than the others. No one gift makes that person more holier, well, better Christian than the other. And what this also suggests is that the spiritual gift is not for self edification, right? The things that we receive is not for myself to be lifted up high, to be more holier. But as verse 7, it says, now to each one, the manifestation of the Spirit is given for the common good. When it says common good, this is us, the communal good. The communal good. So, my spiritual gift, your spiritual gift, it's not for my edification. It's not for you to be more holier. It's not for you to be in a higher rank on the church, but it's actually for all of us to rise. It's all of us as EM, as as Hyoshin, to rise and to give glory to God. This is what Paul is saying, and Paul knows exactly what's happening in the Corinthian church. Everyone is eagerly desiring a fleshier gift. Everyone's eagerly desiring a flesh, ranking each other by who's more holier, who's more spiritual. And he doesn't just tell them to stop. He doesn't say, stop, that's not the way. He actually says, verse 31, he says, now eagerly desire the greater gifts, and yet I will show you the most excellent way. The most excellent way. When you read this in the original Greek word, in the original Greek context, it's. Do you have them? I have a slide that shows. Maybe it's. Can you guys see that? We're just adjusting. I'll make it bigger next time. But um, it's hyperbolein, which means surpassing, exceeding, and then hodos or hodon, which means a way, a path. Even we call it a lifestyle. So when we directly translate this, it's a way that surpasses everything else. It's a way that exceeds every other way. It's a lifestyle that is far better than everything else. That's what the most excellent way is, right? And it's not something that we should consider on top of the ways that we already have. It's not a good add on to the things that we already have. It's the most important way that surpasses far more greater. It's far more greater than anything else. So what is this most excellent way? We know its meaning now, but what is it exactly? Because like I said in earlier times, chapter 12 and 13 are connected by this sentence, the most excellent way. And usually chapter 13 is the more popular chapter in the Corinthians. Paul, people use this a lot in the weddings because it just talks about love and what love is. And it's described this way when we read chapter 13 verses 1 through 3. I'll read this to you guys. It says, if I speak in tongues of men or angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have faith that can move the mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. The most excellent way is this, it's love, no other greater gifts. There are no other greater gifts than love itself. Notice what Paul does here. He's not picking up random examples. He's going straight down the list of what the Corinthians were fighting over. Verse 1, speaking in tongues. All right, this was, like I said in the past, it's a status symbol in the church, in the society. Those who can speak in tongue were considered superior. They were more holier. They were higher rank in the church and in the society. But Paul says, without love, it's just annoying gong and cymbal sound. It's just annoying noises. Verse 2, gift of prophecy. This was particularly valued among the pro Apollos, right? Because they, remember, like I said, they were more intellectual, philosophical. So it just sounds smarter, right? It just sounds more intellectual when you have the gift of prophecy. But Paul says, without love, it's meaningless. It's nothing. It means nothing. And lastly, verse 3, it says, gift of giving and serving. This covers the sacrificial. Look how spiritual I am. I'm working so hard in this church. I do this and I do that for the church. It's for those people. And they say, and Paul says, again, all that you do without love literally means nothing. Means nothing. It doesn't matter what kind of gifts we have, you have. If that gift is not carried by love, it's nothing. So we got to ask ourselves, then what exactly is this love? What does that love actually look like? And here we get our famous passage in chapter 13, where, like I said, a lot of people use it in weddings. Chapter 13, verses 4 through 7. I actually want us to read this together because I want this to be, in a way, the way we love each other. So let's read this. Verse 4, it says, love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonor others, it is not self seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs, it does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Man, one thing noting here is in the original Greek context, these are not adjectives. These are verbs, actually. What that means is another way to read this is love is not patienting. Love is not kinding. When you move down, it's always protecting, it's always trusting, it's always hoping, it's always persevering. It's not an adjective, it's a verb, which means it's an active, ongoing, present tense action word. Here, Paul's not describing a feeling or personality trait that you either have or don't have. He's describing something that we must do every day, every moment of our lives. We may not choose our spiritual gifts. I don't get to choose my voice, my height, the way I look, but love is a choice we make and the action that we take. Love is a way every gift gets to actually mean something for common good instead of being another annoying gong and cymbal sounds. And I was really, thinking about what this first sermon should be. And I know I haven't really sat down and talked with the leaders of what our direction should be for this EM. I have many plans. I have many ideas that I want to pursue, but I realized God was humbling me, right? God was truly humbling me and saying, before all that planning, before all that ideas that you have that you want to carry out, what is your motive? Is it for my self edification? Is it for us to look fancier when you look at from outside of this church? Is it for us to just have fun and enjoy in this place, or is it truly moved and carried by love? I know you guys have been working so hard to sustain, maintain, to even be more prosperous in this ministry, and I want us to, as we start into go into this new season of our EM ministry, I want us to think about that. Think about before all my visions, before all my ideas, before all our programs, our events, what's the foundation of our ministry? And that I want our ministry to take the most excellent way, and that way begins with our gifts, our actions, our desires, our motives being carried and being foundation by love. And this isn't just the idea that I'm proposing to you. This isn't just my thinking, okay, I think love is good, right? God is love, love is good, then let's put love first. This isn't my idea. Jesus was a living proof of it. God didn't just tell us that he loves us, right? He showed us through Jesus and what he did on the cross. Before church planting, before missions, before any gifts were ever given, God showed his love through Christ, and that love became the foundation of Christianity itself today. So, this is my proposal to you from this first day, whatever the ministry becomes, whoever walks through these doors, whatever gifts are present in this ministry, let love be the way that we do all things. Let love be the way that we think in every way.